The universe is collapsing in on itself, so let's make as much money as we can before that happens. This is a review of Death in Space. Let's dive in. Here we have our holographic cover Death in Space book. It is quite small, it's an A4 size. On the inside covers, we have a nice handy dandy equipment, things that you're going to want to know about fuel cost, food, equipment, things like that. And some of them have costs, some of them have slots that they take up in your inventory. These are not included in the equipment section of the book, so you will have to look on the inside cover for this information. And on the back cover, we have a nice cheat sheet that's really handy for GMs and players alike. This would probably be something that I would just print off and give to my players if I was ever going to run this. This Death in Space is been published by Free League Publishing, and it has been written by Christian Plafors and Carl Niblaeus. Aside from the inside covers, we do have a nice table of contents. It just tells you everything that you need to know. It's not needlessly specific. And on the front page, there's actually a really nice tables list. There's a lot of tables in this book, and I really do appreciate that they took the time to list out where all of the tables are, because all of the tables in this book are rollable by nature. You're going to need to roll on them, or they might have important information like, different weapons and armor and things like that. So, without further ado, let's get into the introduction chapter. This chapter is your standard introduction chapter. It serves as an introduction to the game's lore. The universe is collapsing in on itself, and there was like a gem war about a century ago that kind of wrecked all technological advances. So you have like all of these technology based things, but nobody's really making anything new. Everything is a hand me down. And we're going to play as a space wanderer, somebody who takes any job that they can get their hands on just to make some money, and that's pretty much it. You do get a nice introduction to the main hub of the universe, or rather in the system, which is the Iron Ring. It's just like a massive space station that your players will probably end up going on if you play in the default setting, and that's really all there is to it. It's just a little basic explanation before you get into the nitty-gritty stuff later on in the book. So for now, let's head on over to character creation. So the getting started chapter is actually split up into two parts. First, you have your actual character creation chapter, which is for players to create their own characters, and then you're going to have a hub creation chapter, which is where your players basically create a hub that they're going to play around in, which is really cool. Now, I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there. I do not like the color scheme for parts of this book. I get what they're trying to accomplish, but I feel like it really falls short. I mean, take a look at these two pages, if you can. Dark colors should never go on dark background, on solid dark black. It just doesn't work. It is actually quite a bit of a struggle for me to read some of the blue text here because it's really dark. Now, later on, you're going to have lighter colors, and yeah, that makes sense, but dark on black never works out. So, character creation is quick and easy. First, you're going to roll 2d4 for ability scores, but like I mentioned in my character creation video, one of your d4s is going to subtract from the other, and that becomes your ability score. So that means you're going to have some negatives, most likely. Then you're going to choose your origin, which kind of serves as your class and race a little bit. Well, actually, I guess you're pretty much human, but I guess this would serve as your class. Then you're going to choose some character details, like your background, your trait, what drives your character, your looks. And then you're going to determine your past allegiance. This is the time of this would have been at the time of the Gem War, where you would have served. Who were you? or where was your allegiance during that time, and then you're going to finish it off with some hit points and your defense rating. Really like that picture, by the way. It really reminds me of Borderlands. And, of course, very last thing you're going to do is you're going to choose your starting equipment. There are 6 different packages that you can choose from, and don't worry if your ability scores suck. That means that the total is all in the negative. Then you actually get a starting bonus, and this could be things from like a random cosmic mutation to having better HP, or even a heavier Eva suit than everybody else, or even a weapon. Look at that. You can have a pistol right off the bat. And then you have personal trinkets, which every game seems to do now. Oh well. The origins are really, really cool. I really do like them. I liked reading through them. So things you're gonna have your standard ones, like a carbon, which is just your person who lives out in space, or a punk, somebody who kind of rebels against everybody else. But then you're gonna have things like the Void, robed nihility shamans, hidden behind masks, speaking through synthetic voice scramblers. They have seen visions of the edge of the universe. These are like crazy cult people. So there's some really nice descriptions and some really nice different origins, and I really do appreciate that. And already I can kind of see some hints of Mothership, although I read in an interview that the 2 creators didn't even know what Mothership was when they had finished with this book. But there's so many like weird ideas, and it's just like a little hint of Mothership here and there. It's really weird that they would come up with this and not really know what Mothership is, although the 2 games are vastly different. And this product, by the way, is marketed a little bit different than Mothership, which is definitely a sci-fi horror game. But we're not going to talk about that right now. Instead, we're going to get into hub creation. So not only do your players get characters to play as, but they also get a hub to play around it. And hubs come in 2 different varieties. They can either be stations or they can be, spaceships, spacecrafts. Obviously, spacecrafts are going to be for games that focus on exploration, going from one planet to another planet, or even from system to system if you have that capability. And stations are going to be for games that focus on social interaction and intrigue. When it's time, gather your players to create the hub together. You'll need to pick a hub type, remember, spacecraft or station, and both have different stats. They have different damage rate, or actually they have the same damage rating, but they have different fuel capacity. That's where it is. So starting spacecraft has a fuel capacity of 6, whereas station has a fuel capacity of 4. You're going to have to make note of your power source for each, or for the hub that you decide to take. Then you're going to choose a hub background. And there's lots of little choices for you. 20 if you're going for spacecraft, 20 if you're going for station. You can roll those off. Really do like the way that they laid out these tables here. And then you're going to choose a hub quirk. And some of these quirks are kind of interesting. Like a tree with fruit is growing in the crew quarters. Roots throughout the whole spacecraft or station. That's pretty interesting. And just like with character creation, hub creation is just really short and easy. It's just to be like a very basic place for your players. And there are modules that you can get and add to your hub later on as you get more money. So this is really just supposed to be a quick and easy way. Really just, I guess, like narratively you can fancy it up on the inside, but statistically it's very basic. So let's go into playing the game. This chapter is a conglomeration of rules that are needed to play the game. It's a necessary evil as the topics do jump around, but the layout for each topic is well done. So each topic actually starts on its own page. It doesn't start like in the middle of the page, like the next part, void points, could have started here, but instead you have a nice graphic, and then void points actually starts on the next page. I really do appreciate their attention to organization here. So first off, we have general rules. Death in Space is a D20 game that seems to take inspiration from OSR games a little bit. I kind of get that feeling from it. I would generally compare this to Murkborg, even though I want it to be a little bit closer to Mothership. Not in terms of, the percentile system that game uses, but more of in its wacky lore, horror aspect, and it just doesn't. And we'll touch upon that in my final thoughts. There are 4 different abilities. You have body, dexterity, savvy, and tech, and I find it really interesting that body is going to be your melee focused damage dealing stat, right? But dexterity, normally we would peg that to be along with ranged combat, but in this game, tech is your ranged combat attack. Anyways, to make an ability check, you're going to roll a 1d20 and you're going to add the appropriate ability modifier. So remember, your modifier was 2d4, but you subtracted one of those 1d4s from the other to get your ability modifier. And so if you if you get a 12 or higher, you succeed, and that's it. I mean, there are no modifiers to the target number or anything. It's simply roll a 12 or higher and you succeed. Like with most modern D20 games, there is advantage and disadvantage, and it's basically just rolling 2d20 and taking the higher result. That's pretty much it, for advantage at least. Disadvantage is roll 2d20 and take the lower result. So that's all there is. Void points. So the whole concept of the void isn't really explained here, which is a little sad, I guess. It's just a mechanic. So whenever you fail an ability check or an attack roll, you gain 1 void point, and you can only have a maximum of 4. Well, you can use those void points to gain advantage on an ability check or roll or activate a cosmic mutation. And I guess when you really think about it, when you have modifiers that are in the negative, you're probably going to be rolling underneath 12 a lot more often. And so this kind of is a way to negate that. Like I could potentially see you rolling void points like maybe every other roll in some certain situations. And I guess that's okay. Now, cosmic mutations are very special bonuses that you can get. And there's a few ways that you can get one. For example, you can get one as a starting bonus during character creation if you luck into that. Or if you're unlucky for that, because your ability scores have to equal out to a negative number to get one. Or you can get it as a result of player character advancement, or in rare situations when the void is let loose, which means corruption and stuff like that. So if you use a void point for advantage and you still fail the roll, you might actually get corruption. So you're going to roll 1d6 if the result is equal to or lower than the current amount of void points after the spend. You roll on the void corruption chart, and you don't get void points for failing that check, by the way. So this could be something like you become infected by an anarchy program, or you have a vision of the end of the universe, a crushing darkness that envelops all. Change 1 cosmic mutation for a new one. It should be pretty interesting. Cosmic mutations. Not really a big fan of how they split this up. But, I mean, given the size of the book, it's quite understandable. And then we have conditions and spare parts. And I would peg this to be the main focal point of the game, in a way. Because remember, everything is a hand-me-down, which means the condition of certain items or weapons or armors is not going to be brand new. So basically, whenever you use an item with a condition, like a weapon, you're going to roll 1d6. On a 1, you lower the condition of that item by 1. Items at condition 0 are broken and they cannot be used, period. Ships and stations also have condition, and if they get to 0 condition, then you only have access to life support for however long that's going to last. That means your engines are off and you're not moving, so have fun with that. And of course, since we have to deal with condition, we're going to have to deal with repairs. You can either pay somebody to repair an item for you, or you can do it yourself. In order to repair it yourself, you're going to need some spare parts. Think of it as another form of currency. And there's actually 2 different types. You have electronics and weapons, And then you're going to have vehicle components. So vehicle components are going to be useful for, repairing your ship or station and stuff like that. Dismantling does not require a skill roll, but it does take up so many hours. One condition of repair costs 1 unit of components. For broken items, the first condition point requires components equal to the maximum condition value. So don't let your stuff go down to 0 condition. Repairing, by the way, also does not require any rolling. It just takes up time, which I find really interesting in a way, because usually in something like this, dismantling and repairing, that's going to be like a skill check. But here it's just done. You just roll like a 1d6 for however many hours it takes. For vehicles, you roll a d20, and that's how many hours it takes to repair. So I find it really interesting that they kind of went around with this, especially since there's a tech attribute. So let's say you want to go outside and play. This is everything you need to know about your Ava suit. Your Ava suit has the following: 7 hours of oxygen supply and built-in life support, 2-way voice communication, display for the suit's status and the wearer's health parameters, kind of reminds me of Dead Space in a way, cooling system and pressure regulation functions, an umbilical cable with which the wearer can connect the suit to the life support system of a spacecraft or a mobile life support system, a can of repair foam for unexpected damage like bullet holes or other penetrating trauma, and magnetic boots. Yay! There's also 2 different types of Ava suits. You have a light Ava suit and then you have a heavy Ava suit. Light Ava suits take about 5 minutes to get into, whereas heavy Ava suits take about 30 minutes time, although they probably have more armor and stuff like that. There's also rules for 0 gravity, so basically if you're in 0 gravity and you want to do something that requires a dexterity check, you're going to have disadvantage on that, and that's pretty much it. By the way, if you fire a weapon in 0 gravity, you're going to get launched backwards, the opposite direction from where you're shooting. So there's that. For space travel, there are actually 2 methods of traveling through the great vastness of space. First off, you have sublight travel, which takes forever, even from planet to planet, and then you have something called bridging, which is a form of FTL travel between 2 buoys. Buoys? Such tech is actually really expensive though, and you're going to be very lucky if you could even get your hands on it. There's all sorts of things that can actually happen, especially if you go into cryo sleep. So yeah, have fun with that. Or even if you have bridging technology and you decide to do the FTL thing, something might happen. And I really do like those little complications that can happen. Combat is pretty much what you would expect. You're able to take 1 action and move about 15 meters. Initiative is different. Whoever initiated combat goes first. That's it. If it's unclear, then you're going to pick at random. And I don't like it. What is different, though, is that the last person to act chooses who goes next. I am also not a big fan of that, but they actually have a fairly good reasoning behind that. So this method of determining turn order reinforces the idea of the player characters as a crew acting together, since they can choose a turn order that combines their actions in a strategic manner. I never really thought of it that way, but I'm sure players probably do. I'm still on the fence about it, especially in terms of initiative, but oh well. I mean, it makes sense given that you're going to be picking who goes next, so it's only natural that whoever acts first initiates the combat and then they get to choose who goes next, so it kind of makes sense that way. Whenever you do want to attack, you're going to roll 1d20. You're going to add body if you're using a melee attack, or you're going to add tech if you're using a ranged attack. If you beat the defender's DR or defense rating, you hit. You roll for damage. Simple, right? PCs can actually take a risky attack. To do so, you roll your standard attack, and if you hit, you deal it extra damage of die. If you miss, though, the opponent immediately gets a counterattack and gets to choose who acts next. So, yeah, don't let that happen. If you roll a natural 20, it is a crit, meaning you roll an extra die to deal extra damage. When combat is over, it's time to determine your condition loss. You're going to roll 1d6. Remember, if you roll a 1, the weapon that you use rolls or is lowered by one condition. And that's for each weapon that you use. So if you pull out a pistol and then you pull out a bat and use that, then you're going to have to roll for both. Enemies have a morale. So if you defeat half of an enemy group, reduce a lone enemy to half HP, or defeat the leader of the group, then the enemies roll 2d6. If the result is higher than the morale score, they flee. If a PC reaches 0 HP, then they roll a body check. If they are successful, they stabilize and are unconscious. If they fail, however, they're dead. That's it. They're just dead. Now, when a PC dies, you roll a d20 and consult this list. And this is like their true death. Yeah, I don't really get it either. Again, this is like some zany, wacky mothership type stuff, but again, it doesn't really play into the whole game. Like, this is as far as they ever take it. So, just like with regular combat, ship combat starts when one of the crafts takes a hostile action against the other. PCs make their actions whenever it is their ship's turn. Just like with normal combat, they choose who goes next. If they are the last PC to act, then they choose another ship. Distances are interesting this time around. Like, you still have your short, long, extreme, engage, but they're termed differently. So you have detection range, which is when the ships can communicate with each other. Then you have identification range, where the ships can scan one another. They can see like company logos and stuff like that, or tell what type of ship it is. Then you have the firing range, where your attacks happen, and then you have boarding range, where you can board the enemy craft. You can actually jump between the ships and board the other if you're lucky enough. Some actions are considered risky maneuvers. The pilot will have to make a savvy check. Failure costs the ship 1 fuel. A success means the ship can move 2 steps, so like from detection to firing range, for instance. Firing a weapon is the same as with people combat. You beat the other ship's DR and you hit, but you will have to worry about conditioning a little bit later. So let's say that your ship does take a hit. The frame of your ship is going to be what is damaged, and so it's a little wonky here. So damage to a spacecraft is tracked through its frame integrity, which is 100% for an unharmed spacecraft. Damage to the frame comes in steps of 10 percentage points and represents temporary damage that does not require spare parts to repair. When the frame is reduced to 50%, roll on the spacecraft disasters table. At 0% frame integrity, the spacecraft is broken and its condition is reduced to 0. And this is where it gets really wonky. So when all is calm and the crew has had a few hours to handle urgent damage to the spacecraft, the craft regains 1d6 times 10% of its frame integrity. I guess they kind of phrase it to where your crew is automatically gonna stitch together the ship. But when I first read that, that kind of really made it seem like, oh, your ship just magically repairs itself, which I guess is not the case. Spending at least 1 night at a calm space station or a peaceful planet or moon regains all lost frame integrity. That really does make it sound like it just magically happens. If the spacecraft is broken, it cannot regain frame integrity. So there's also that. Well, at the end of the day, you're probably going to gain some experience. Experience happens at the end of every session, and it's one of those weird, the GM asks you questions, and if you answer yes for any of them, you get like 1 XP. I'm not a really huge fan of that type of thing, but it's here, I guess. And there's actually 4 different things that you can use your XP to buy. You can actually increase an ability score, increase your HP, gain a cosmic mutation. Although to do that, one ability must be lowered by 1, and you have to determine your mutation randomly too, so it could be a double-edged sword there. Or you can gain another origin benefit, but you can only have at most 2. So some of those origin benefits, though, are pretty interesting, so it might be worth it to get one quite soon. Anyways, that's actually it for how to play the game. Let's take a look at the extras. This is the lore dump chapter. So imagine this. The universe is dying or imploding in on itself slowly but surely. The results of the Gem War have halted technology and nothing is made brand new. You and your crew travel great distances, spending years in a cryopod just to get a few hollows. It's like Merkborg, but in space. The Tenebris system is the default system setting for this book, although you can easily create your own. I mean, there's plenty of resources to do just that. In the Tenebris system, though, there are different planets that you can travel to, each with their own details. Very thankfully, they actually have a time or a travel time in weeks chart, which makes it easy. So, like, if you're going from one planet to another, just roll on the chart, and that's how long it takes for you in weeks to get to the next place that you're going to. And there are cults. Ooh, let's talk about cults. I actually find it really weird that they have included cults in this book. So cults are religious orders that are crazy. And they each have their own agenda. They each have, well, some of them have certain influences with the void, and some are just doing their own thing for reasons. So let's take the Liad Somnia. They are disfigured humans or humanoids that resemble primitive ways. They only speak in grunts, and their goal is to become one with the void. Yeah, that sounds about right. Or to the other, TTO. This is like the remnants of a mega corporation, and they simply just want to build a mega spaceship that can travel to the beginning or the end of the universe. You know, what everybody wants. The Ring is a base of operations for the Tenebris system, and there's actually a starting adventure here that you could run that introduces your players to the Ring and actually gets them a hub. So, in this adventure, the PCs arrive at the Ring after purchasing a hub of some sort. It could either be a spacecraft or an actual station. And it still needs fuel, and it needs some other things to get it up and running. Now, on the Ring, in this specific sector, there's a gang war that's about to erupt. And the PCs can play one side against the other, or they can play both sides, take a risk and play both sides to get what they want or need to complete their hub. I really do like that they give you some places to go around, like the docking bay. It tells you some events that are happening, the people that are there, any shops, common area, the engine room. Really do like the maps here. You have a computer center, and that's actually it. It is an interesting setup. I really do like the info in this chapter. I like how gritty the setting is, although I really much would have preferred if they had leaned more into the sci-fi horror, as has been hinted throughout this book, like with Void, maybe like having a stress system or even or a panic system of some sort really could have made this stand out a little bit more. Anyways, let's go to tables and tools. These are just random tables to make playing easier. Within it, you're going to find creatures of the abyss. So, little example alien creatures that you can throw against your players. Although I really wish they had included some humanoid like mercenaries or pirates and stuff like that, just to make it a little bit easier, or save some time for the GM so that we don't have to create that, But oh well. You have things like nightmares. You have traps and obstacles. Encounters for space. Iron ring locations. Addictive substances. That's always a fun one to play around with. Spacecraft, power systems, general modules to upgrade your hubs with, tech modules, confrontation modules. Then you have some examples of non-player hubs, some crews, some gangs and stuff like that. I guess this would be more of where you would find those humanoid characters. but there really is only just a few. You have a list of weapons, list of armor. I really do like the pictures here. Some contractors that'll give you some missions and an NPC generator. So that's really all there is for this one. It's a nice, short, easy read. I think I got it read through in just about a day's time. And there really aren't any concepts that are too difficult. So let's get into my final thoughts. Just like with most of my reviews nowadays, I like to categorize my final thoughts into 4 different categories, from gore, gameplay, artwork, layout, and content. Let's start with core gameplay. The core gameplay for Death in Space is simplistic. It's a D20 system where any skill check you roll needs to roll 12 or better. And I think that's where the main faults of this game lie for me. There's really no way to increase the target number. I mean, I guess you could homebrew that, but it's straight up just a roll a 12 or better, and if you do, you succeed, and that's it. Sure, advantage and disadvantage will change the odds of success, but I mean, it really would have been nice if they had included, like, oh, if you want to make this like one step more harder for your players, then this would be the number that you would want to go to. But I guess you're just going to have to play around with advantage and disadvantage. So I've heard this compared to the likes of Murkborg, and I would say that the setting is like a futuristic version of that. When I think about it, this game really reminds me of Dancing with Bullets Under a Neon Sun, a very rules-light cyberpunk style game where I was left wanting more. I want more from this game. This could have been a pretty decent sci-fi horror game, but you don't have any horror-style mechanics like stress or panic that make those other games popular. And Death in Space actually hints at leaning towards that weird cosmic horror side at times, like, with void and cosmic mutations and things like that. So for this one, I am going to have to give it a D10 out of a D20. Artwork. The artwork is interesting. Once again, I am reminded of Murkborg or even Mothership without being grotesque. I really do like some of the ship station artwork here. The color scheme, however, is a bit of a mess. As I've stated before, dark colors on black backgrounds just doesn't work, and it was a real struggle for me to read the first 2 chapters because of it. Other than that, though, the artwork is actually quite good, and so for that, I will give it a D12 out of 20. Layout. Everything is easy to find. Topics start fresh on a page like they should instead of in the middle of a page. The tables are well organized, although I'm not really a big fan when they have to split tables where one half of the table is on one page and the other is. But given the fact that this book is A4 size and the tables are clean, it is actually quite understandable. And I am actually going to give the layout a D20 out of 20. The content. Everything you're going to need is here. There are sample aliens, although I kind of really do wish they had included some more humanoid archetypes, but I mean, what we have is enough, I suppose. You're given a playground to play in with a station to serve as a hub for everyone in the system. That's the ring. This, even though it just has that, it's got just a playground. It's more of a book that focuses on these are the rules type of deal. I could still see myself taking adventures from Mothership and tweaking them just a little bit and putting them in here. You would definitely take out all of that stress stuff, tweak some of the alien monsters a little bit, but it could actually really work. And in fact, I would, if I were to use this, I would probably take a pound of flesh, that space station that's in there, and run an adventure from that in this system where, your crew is just a band of hardened mercenaries or something like that. So for the content, I would give this a D20 out of 20. Overall, this book came out at a very awkward time. Mothership is getting ready to release their first edition, probably a little bit later this year, as Cyborg, which is the Merkborg cyberpunk game that was on Kickstarter. I think it bears mentioning that mechanically, this seems like a very light version of Stars Without Numbers, and it's like Merkborg in space in terms of its lore. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. I think the problem that I have with this game is that I had a preconception of what I wanted this book to be. I wanted it to be a Mothership killer, or, an opponent to Mothership. Especially with Mothership transitioning into that first edition, it seemed like the perfect time to actually bring about a new game in that whole sci-fi horror genre. This is not that type of a game. It's like it wants to be sci-fi horror without really committing to the genre. And I think that's its greatest fault. Would I play this with my gaming group? That actually really depends. The current group I play with on Roll20, probably not. I know they like sci-fi horror, or at least I hope they do, and Alien and Mothership have been our go-to games for between our Star Wars campaigns. But if I had a new group that wasn't interested in the horror aspect and they wanted something a little bit more sci-fi mercenary style, quick, easy, go there, do this job with the occasional alien monster, then I think this would have been something that could really fill that void. See what I did there? Anyways, that is my review on Death in Space. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Give this video a huge thumbs up to support this series, and subscribe if you would like to see more. I will see you guys in the next video.